So continuing forward with our enumeration process, the next thing we're going to talk about are Windows null sessions. And this has been tossed around as probably one of the most critical vulnerabilities or flaws, if you want to call it, associated with the Windows operating system. And basically it utilizes the server message block communication, which is used for data sharing and advertisement and basically network communications that are specific to Windows machines. So this is only going to be found on a Windows box with the exception of CIFS. And CIFS is basically a Unix or NetWare replacement for SMB and associated Windows file sharing. CIFS is going to be vulnerable or susceptible to many of the same attacks that SMB will be. So CIFS is also something to be looking out for. CIFS stands for Common Internet File System, by the way. So there's actually an authentication flaw built into CIFS and SMB that allow for the concept of null sessions. And null sessions are basically going to live up to their name by establishing an authentication and a session by using a null user account. So we're going to authenticate, but we're going to do it with no credentials at all. Now, once the null session has been established, it can be used to do all types of different things. And the basic idea of what you might use this for is to browse the file system, for example, depending on how the system reacts. So we can also use them to gain system information, such as associated shares and drives, user accounts, you name it. There's a lot of information that can be gained there. And the basic flaw itself is the LSA authority, or the LSA service, will auto-create a user account under the name of S-1-5-7. And that's the SID, or security identifier, that's associated to that account. So because it does create a SID for a null user, it allows you to have permissions on the system. And the permissions will depend on the configuration and type of system you're attacking. So let's take a quick look at a null session in action. We're going to go back to our XP attack-based system. We're going to continue to pick on the Advocate web server because it's been so good to us in the past. And the command is actually pretty simple. We're going to do a standard net use command, what you might see when you're mapping a drive or setting up a printer on LPT1. And we're going to go ahead and specify our target, which is going to be .132. Now, the thing that we're going to do differently here is we're actually going to request the IPC share. And notice that I put the $ after that. The IPC share is a special share used for certain services on a Windows box. And the reason that it has that $ after it is it's an administratively hidden share, meaning we're not supposed to be able to see it by simply browsing the network, even if we do have permissions. And we're going to actually specify our blank user account like so. If we press enter, we can see that the command completed successfully. And by doing a simple net view, we can see that it's now been mounted along with some other systems. There you go. So we can see that that's been added in there. So if we want to try to authenticate to that system, and again, this depends on the system and the configuration associated with it, we're going to go ahead and see if we can access the administratively shared root of the C drive. And remember, this is kind of the mecca of hacking, because if you can get access to the C drive with read and write permissions, you can do anything you want to do on a system. So let's see if we were able to accomplish that with a simple null authentication attempt. So it looks like it's thinking about it, and pretty soon, there we go. So we actually now have access to the WinNT folder for this system. And remember, we haven't authenticated to it except for a null user. We can see here we have Microsoft SQL information. Chances are we'll have access to the various tables. There you go. There's every single table associated with the Microsoft SQL service running here. So we could walk away with the master table or the stock info table. Here's a great example of some useful information. So as you can see, using this null session, you can gain lots of information and potentially, under the right circumstances, gain root access to a system. And also remember that these vulnerabilities are associated only to Windows systems or other operating systems running the CIFS service.